Okay, so now that we understand the box model completely, it is time we move on to another aspect of styling, which is positioning, which basically deals with putting the elements wherever we want them on the screen. For instance, we discussed that the sidebar or the promo bar should come on the right hand side of the screen or the extreme left of the screen, and all that is done with the help of positioning. So in this video, as you can see, we have the exact same code which we used in the previous one, except I have removed all the styling from it. So in this video we'll try to have a look at all the different kinds of positionings available and how to actually position elements on the screen wherever we want them to. So for doing that, we need to equip ourselves with one new tag and a few attributes. So let's get started. The tag which is required in this case is the div tag, which stands for division. So let me quickly cover both the elements inside the div tag. So basically what we are trying to do here is that we are trying to cover the heading in one box or one division, and similarly we are covering the paragraph in another box or another division, right? So what we'll be doing is that we make this into a box, and then we position these two boxes wherever we want them to, and the text inside them or the content will automatically adjust, right? So that is the whole idea behind this. Now for styling these divisions, we need to distinguish between them somehow, right? Because if I go ahead and write div tag here, it will apply to both of these. Thus, to separate this, we use the id attribute, which basically distinguishes both of them and gives each of them a unique id. For example, if I say head here and I say para here, so we have two different divisions with two different identifications for both of them. So now for utilizing this id which we gave, we need to use the hash symbol followed by the name of the id. So let me quickly add a background color so that you guys know what I am talking about. Right, so now what we did was we covered this heading into one box, or we put it inside one box which is now of the cyan color. Similarly, I'll add a color to the para division as well, which is this paragraph here. So background color, let me call it purple. I guess blue and purple will be easily distinguishable. Okay, there we go. This is a bit too dark, probably I'll go with magenta. Right, so as you can see, it recognizes most of the common colors which we talk about daily. Other than that, we can always go ahead with some hexadecimal code of some random color. I don't know what that will be. Okay, it is somewhere between red and orange. Sounds good to me. So these are two different ways of representing color values here. What we want to do is we'll try sticking this heading to the extreme right of the page. So for doing that, we go here and we add the float rule, float right. So what this will do is I'll show you, right? So basically it will stick the header to the extreme right of the screen. Similarly, if we go ahead and say float left, it will stick the header to the extreme left of the screen, and the rest of the space is occupied by the elements below it, which in this case is the paragraph element. Right, so let us try sticking this to the extreme left and the paragraph to the extreme right, and let us try bringing both of them on the same line. So right now the paragraph is not actually on the extreme right, it is just occupying the space available here. So what I'll do is I'll quickly go ahead and I'll write float right here, which should put the paragraph to the extreme right. So now as you can see, the paragraph comes down to the next line because there is not enough space for the width of this paragraph to fit in the right side. So what we need to do is we need to reduce the width of the paragraph. There are two ways of doing that. The first one is we use percentage. So 50% width means that from the original value, the width which will be applied right now will be 50% of the original value. So now when we refresh it, we see that the paragraph is stuck to the extreme right and it takes 50% of the space which it used to take initially, right? Another way of doing that is we use the pixels. So we can specify the number of pixels which we want, and the paragraph will then be that many pixels wide. So this is 500 pixels for my screen, and that is what determines the width of the paragraph. So again, two ways. One is the percentage and the second is actually the exact pixel values which you want. It is recommended that we use the percentage here because the pixel values change with every screen based on the resolution. However, percentage does not change on different screens, right? So again, if you are sure that your website will be used on one particular kind of a device, you can go ahead with pixels, no harm in that. However, using percentage is still recommended to fit in all the screen sizes, right? So that is how we actually position the elements to the extreme right or to the extreme left, right? The next thing which we need to understand is the different kinds of positioning that are possible. So this was the simplest way of doing that. Let me remove it. And basically Float does not offer much customization, right? It either sticks to the extreme left or to the extreme right. However, what if I want it to be visible somewhere here in the middle of the screen? So for doing that, we'll use the position rule. So there are three different kinds of positioning. One is called the absolute positioning. Then we have something called as a relative positioning, and the third one is fixed positioning. So let us start with the absolute one. So basically absolute positioning means that whatever values we specify, the element will be available in the exact location, right? So for instance, after this I mentioned the distances I want the element to be from the top, from the left, from the right, or from the bottom. Okay, so if I say 400 pixels from the left, which eventually means the remaining distance from the right, and 50 pixels from the top, which again means the remaining distance from the bottom. So basically what I am trying to say is we need to either specify the top or the bottom. Similarly, we specify either the left one or the right one. The other value is calculated automatically. So now when we refresh it, we see that it is 50 pixels from the top and 400 pixels from the right. So if I increase this 50 to say 500 and refresh it, we get it somewhere here. So similarly, if you want it to be on the center, what we can do is we can actually divide the total value of our screen resolution to half, and we can give that particular value to the top and to the left one. So that is one way to go about it. The next is something called as relative positioning. So in the case of relative positioning, what actually happens is that element is positioned relative to the current position of the element. For instance, right now the position has some 20 pixels from the top and maybe some 10 pixels from the left. So now when we go ahead and I use the relative positioning to specify the values, and I say 500 pixels, what will actually happen is that the element will be positioned from the top of its current location, right? So currently it was somewhere around here, so 500 pixels starting from this point. That is how the relative positioning works. Distance from the top of the current position of the element. Alright, so now if I add right 30 pixels to this, what will happen is the element will move right from the current location. So currently the element is here, the right end is here. So now when I refresh it, you see that it moves 30 pixels from the right of the current location, right? So basically it goes out of the screen because the width is not matching, and it is moved 30 pixels right of the current position where it should be, right? So that is how the relative positioning works. The third category or the third type of positioning is the fixed positioning. So basically the fixed position is something which makes the element fix on the screen throughout. Alright, so to understand the fixed positioning, what I am going to do is I'll actually reduce the width to 10 pixels so that the website actually becomes scrollable. And when I refresh this, yeah, so we get the scroll. So right now as you can see, the header sticks throughout whenever I scroll. Okay, so let's say I do not put the fixed positioning here, I leave it blank for now. So now when we scroll down, the header actually goes off with the scroll, right? But what happens when we make it fixed? When we make it fixed, we see that the header stays throughout even when we are scrolling, right? So that is what fixed positioning is all about. Those are the three different kinds of positionings that are possible.